Hey, what's up everybody? This is your girl Christina. Welcome to my channel Dev Diva Hacks, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can take an idea and turn it into an app. Make an app out of it. Now, this is really good for people who are just learning how to code, and let's say they've been doing tutorials, following along step-by-step tutorials how to build a project for a long time, and they're ready to break out of the tutorial cycle. This is a great video for you. Or maybe you're just an intermediate developer and you're just like, hey, I would love to learn how to just take an idea and just build an app out of it, but I don't know how to write out those steps. This video is also for you. All right, so stay tuned and I'll show you guys how you can take an idea and turn it into an app. See y'all on the other side.
I got problems on problems on problems on problems on problems on problems to solve them. I run through the money, the pressure be calling. Left on my blessings, I feel like I'm falling. The birdie is back, tell me I'm garbage.
Hey, what's up you guys? So I want to give you guys a scenario that I like to use. The best way to explain how to take an idea and build it to an app is to give you a case study, right? My own, not that's only a case study, but I've done this personally. Now, I have someone come up to me and they say, hey, I would like somebody to build me an app where it's a monitoring system. So it's an alarm monitoring system where it can detect fire hazards and detect when my equipment starts to malfunction. Because this client, he is a restaurant business owner, and this business owner, he has tons of kitchen equipment that are regulated by temperature. So he wants a monitor that can detect not only fire hazards like smoke, heat, fire, all that fun stuff, but also the temperature drops, or if it's too hot, then it will notify his employees or himself. That way they can go and correct that issue immediately. Now, so that's a scenario that we're working with. Now, at the time I was receiving this information, I'm like, okay, I had some follow-up questions of how the app's going to be used. Is there going to be a hardware associated with this one? He said yes. And is this going to be a mobile app? So we really took the time and dived deep into what was he really looking for. And believe it or not, people tell you these ideas from the beginning. Like when you first have an idea and we talk about it, not everything is truly fleshed out. They say they want this, but then 5 days later they want something else, or they change their mind. So you have to be, as a developer, be flexible with them, because they are going to change their minds, and it's going to be some changes throughout the projects, throughout the time building this app. So it's normal. Now, if you're just creating an app for yourself and you just have an idea, you want to build an app for yourself, then it's a lot easier. But when you're dealing with other clients and other people and you're building an app for them, then that's a whole, whole another beast in itself. So as a developer, you have to make sure you get the requirements, you understand what those requirements are, you understand what the person is looking for. Expect some changes. And most times not most times, I always do this. When it gets towards, when I'm 50% through my project, I do not allow changes at this point. There has to be a certain point where, all right, at this point of the project, I will not accept any new major requirements or major changes to the app, because I spent so much time on it and it's 50% or halfway done. The worst part is, it's always bad when a client comes in and they throw at you a crazy idea or requirement that they want you to add to the app, but you're 90% done of it. That's the worst. So you have to create that boundary as a developer, like, hey, small changes I'll do, but once I get to a certain point of me building this application, I can't accept any more big requirements. This is it. If you want me to do another major big requirement with the app, that could be a feature and that'll be a separate charge. So keep that in mind. Put those boundaries and those limitations up front. Tell the person up front, this is what you're going to expect, because I'm telling you, people will do that. People change their minds all the time. So expect that. So once you get your requirements and you understand what they're looking for, you understand the types of people that are going to be using the app, and understand the different types of scenarios of how this app is going to be used, Then you got to get into the research part. Research is number two. Now, when I created the alarm monitoring system, I took the time to understand which platform is going to be used. It's going to be a desktop, it's going to be a web app, it's going to be a mobile. And the gentleman I was talking to, he was really ambitious. He was like, listen, I want this as, I want to be on the website. I want to be accessible on all platforms. And I'm like, whoa. So that changes a lot of that. It's too broad. So I shared with him, like, hey, let's start out with a desktop. Let's just focus on one thing. Let's build it as a desktop app. And then as time goes on, we'll build it to the point where it's a mobile app. But one thing at a time. So I told him I start out as a desktop app and just test it, see how it runs. And that's considered my prototype. Once I did the research, I talked to him about it. I did a research on which technology stack to use. And that is the most important thing when you're researching. And it's probably the most common issues that developers run into. They get an app idea, but they're not sure which technology stack to use. Oh, should I just use HTML and JavaScript? Or can I build this out of just .NET? And can I build it with this technology? Like, there's so many tools out there to build it. Make sure you pick something that you are comfortable with, especially if you're dealing with a client. If you're dealing with a client and there's a deadline, stick to what you know. Pick a technology stack that you know, and then if they require something that you don't know about, pick something that's a very small learning curve. Because the moment you pick a technology stack that requires you to do some learning before you build, it extends the deadline. Not saying it's a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with you picking a technology that you can just learn and then you can execute it. But you have to do it right, especially if you're doing it for a client. So it's a little risky. If you're not familiar with it and you're learning as you're going, you want the execution to be right, especially when they're paying you. So I don't recommend it. I recommend sticking to tech stack that you do know. Now, if you're building an app for yourself out of an idea, then that's a totally different ballgame. You can take your time and explore different avenues of which technology stack you want to learn or explore, and just be adventurous. That is totally different. But if you're working with a client, I highly recommend you stick with what you know, and then have a small learning curve. The smaller the learning curve, the better it is for you, because like I said, nothing wrong in venturing out, but you have to let the client know that you have to extend the deadline. Don't tell them about the learning curve. Just tell them, hey, deadline is going to be a little extended, and make sure you're able to understand that technology and execute it correctly. So that's the thing you have to worry about. The most important thing to worry about when you're researching. Now, the next step is to draw it out. Now, we're 3 steps in: requirements, research, and the next step is to draw it out. This whole time, we're not opening up the computer yet. We're at the drawing stage. Hey, what's up, you guys? This is my beautiful flowchart. Now, this is the fun part right here. Once you have your requirements, the users are going to be using this, how the app is going to be used, and the different scenarios and the functionality. Now it's time to take words and put it on the board. And yes, I'm old school. I like my whiteboard. I like markers. I like colors. This is very easy for me to visualize as I'm coding. Now, start off on this side of the flowchart. It's always good to map out how the information is going to be inputted. Map out how which point where the system's going to communicate with the database, which table. So write down these details. These details are so important and so helpful. So when you do write your code out, it's so much easier to write out exactly how you want it to be. Now, you see these different shapes. You see the diamonds and the squares. For those who are not familiar about flowchart diagrams for programming, anytime you see a rectangle, this is called a processing symbol. So that's a rectangle. So this process this first step right here is the input. Input meaning the sensor is going to detect a fire hazard, and that is the input to start this start the application to run, and that would be the sensor class. based on my case study here. Now, anytime you see a diamond on the flow chart, that means the system has to make a decision. For example, is this a fire hazard? Smoke is coming in. Is this a fire hazard? Yes. Then move on to step 2. Is it a fire hazard? Let's say it's not a fire hazard. Then we go back to our input process, and the system's going to wait and continue to wait until an actual fire hazard comes in. So that's how this process is going to work. And I have diamonds throughout my flow chart that makes decisions about different scenarios. And the rectangles, that means that each time there's a decision, it has to go through a process. And this one has notification class. It's going to log. There's a log table that goes to the database. And then so we have different scenarios. Now this half of the alarm monitoring system is just detecting. It's just monitoring and detecting and analyzing. Once we get on this side of the flowchart diagram, we talk about, all right, once we know for sure it's a fire hazard, how is the system going to notify the user? It's going, I have here my example. There's going to be a timer. There's going to be a sound. There's a timer will go off if the person doesn't type in the PIN code within a certain amount of time. Then it's going to contact the monitoring service, and then the authorities. And of course, I have my UI, and this is how it's going to look like in the end with my UI display. And we're going to talk about testing as well. So there's 3 steps here to this flow chart: input, processing, analyzing, notification, and then display it out to the user. Now, yep, and this is why we have a flow chart. So once we're done with the flow chart, it was done beautifully. We got all those specific details. Now we're ready to finally take it on the computer. And I opened up my IDE. I use Visual Studio 2019, whatever latest version is out there, 2019 version. And before I show the code real quick, I forgot to mention this earlier. I do have a digital version of the flowchart, and I use Microsoft Visio. There's plenty of flowchart diagram software out there, but my preferred choice is Microsoft Visio. Now, not gonna lie, that software is $280. It's a very expensive software to own, but once you have it, you have it. And if you are a developer, it's a great tool to use. It's only used on Windows. They don't have a version for Mac unfortunately, so it's only good for Windows. So I do have Microsoft Visio, and I did recreate the diagram as a digital version as well. So I'll show you guys that in a bit. So I see you guys on the other side, and I'll show you guys my semi-finished product. It's not finished yet, but at least I have a prototype ready to show you guys. Alright, you guys are finally with me. You're on my computer, and I would like to show you my digital version of the flowchart. So, like I mentioned before, the software that I use is Microsoft Visio. It's a great piece of software. It's not available on Mac. Unfortunately, they haven't made one for Mac yet, but it is available for Windows. And like I mentioned before, it's pretty pricey, but it's totally worth it. Now, for this flowchart right here, I created a digital version of what I did on the whiteboard. You can see behind me, and basically it's the same thing, just more visual. It's digital, so if I was to email off to my client who I'm working with, he has a copy of that digital table. We make notes on here. So this is a really great tool. So anytime you work with a client or you're creating your app idea, this is a great way to communicate and be able to show a prototype. This is technically a prototype. Especially this part right here. We have an idea of what we want the sensor to look like for the UI. Now, the other diagram I like to use is called a UML. Ouch. Got to change to the other diagram. Now, this is a UML. This is the one I was talking about earlier, where a UML basically is a diagram that has classes, and then it allows you to break down by properties, methods, the input database, and you create the flow of how the classes are supposed to communicate. It's supposed to retrieve, send back, and that's where this is what the arrows mean. It's a flow chart. Now, as a flow chart, it's a more detailed flow chart. Now, with UMLs, I highly recommend doing this so that way you know exactly what to write and you're not thinking about the method name, the property names, everything. This is where you do all that little details you have to think about in this diagram right here. Now, once you have this diagram, now you're ready to open up Visual Studio and start writing it out. And I'm telling you, ever since I've done these steps, instead of me just winging it, it made my life so much more easier. Now I'm able to whip out ideas, get it done, map it out, get it done, and start developing. Now, the product I'm about to show you, the code itself, it's not a finished product yet. It still has bugs and tweaks it needs to be done. It's not perfect, but at least I have something working and functional. So I want to show the code I have real quick. Where's the Visual Studio? Where's my Visual Studio? Per sensor, blah, blah, blah. Bam. Bam. Oh no, my screen went black. No, where is it? There it is. Woo! Gosh. Alright, so here is the code. This is my prototype. So, the most important thing, especially when it comes to development, is testing. Test everything. Unit testing is everything. So, I'm not gonna go into too much detail what unit testing is. You can Google it, or you can basically look it up yourself. Or you know what? I may make a video about unit testing and show you some tips and tricks how to do that, because unit testing is so important. So subscribe to my channel, that way you know when that video comes up. But basically, when I talk about unit testing is I create a test where I have the sensors. If I trigger a sensor, it's already programmed with a certain fire hazard, and I expect the system to notify me according to that fire hazard. So I am using a Windows form to create this. Now, I'm going to say this again. This is not the final product. This is a prototype. This is just to see, for me, if I can get this to work functionally. Get this to work. So, of course, I broke down the classes, the input. So, I have all my classes here, and I have not linked up to a database yet. I'm going to create a database table soon. That's why you don't see it in this solution. So, this is basically the final step. And believe it or not, when I wrote out the code for this project, it didn't take me long at all, because I have my flow chart, I have my UML, I have all these diagrams, these references. All I gotta do is type it out, boom, 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 create the Windows form, boom, 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 and now we have a prototype. So that's basically how I took an idea and be able to build it into an application. And there we have it. So we literally just took a concept. We had a concept, so we had an idea of creating this alarm system. We wrote out the requirements. We talked about the different users going to use it, how it's going to be used, the functionality. Once we have those information written down, and it's just an idea from our head to our paper, we did the second step, and we did research. We look up the technology we want to use. The third step, we did the flow chart and the UML diagram, and I showed you guys both ways to do it. The old school whiteboard, and then on Microsoft Visio, where I created a digital flow chart and UML. And then finally we got to the code. So it seems very simple. Like I laid it out A, B, C, D, E, but understand it takes time, and the code that I just showed you earlier, it's not a finished product. I know there's a lot of bugs and tweaks. I could make it better and make it flow better, but at least I have a prototype. Now we have a prototype, and all I gotta focus on is just making it better. So that's the best part. So This video, I took you from point A to point B, how you can take an idea from your head and turn it into a prototype like I have here. And once you have a prototype, you're set. All you gotta do is just keep chipping at it little by little to make it the best possible application it can be, and be prepared to be sold or used for the client or for yourself. Use it for your portfolio. Now, thank you so much for watching this video. If you find value out of this video, this really helped you take whatever ideas in your head and build into an app, go ahead and hit the like button. Share the video. Share it to anybody who's been struggling to execute their ideas to build an app. This is a great process. And mind you, I didn't learn this in school. I took different work experiences, and I just took all these different experiences, and that's how I built out this process. And it's very simple. It's simple, but a lot of work, and it takes time. You gotta be patient with yourself. Now, if you like the video, go ahead and like it. And if you want to see more content like this, where I talk about software development, coding, how to land your next position as a software engineer, and I share tips, productivity tips, and etc., go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I like to upload videos every week, so stay tuned. And thank you so much for watching, and I see you on the next one. Peace.